Hello, Internet. It is a early Thursday evening, sorry. So, some background music there. It's actually just recording off of, out of my window one night for a bit. So, how you been? Salgood Sam here, in case you don't know. I guess it's live streaming, so it might be on the front page or something like that. Most of you probably here, if you are at all, because I subscribe or you saw my post on Facebook. You might still hear my computer revving a little bit, but it's mostly been fixed. I did the replacement of the thermal paste. There we go, that's the word. And it worked a wonder. It was revving like crazy, doing nothing. And now it's actually staying relatively quiet, recording video and playing music and all the things. We are pleased. It was quite straightforward, not very hard at all. For those of you nervous about it, I got lucky too. This thing has a heat sink that is snapped on. It's got like little twist snap into place things instead of having to use torque wrenches or anything. So extra simple and straightforward, which is nice. I like that. Very simple and straightforward. Yeah, that's good. So it has been quite a couple of weeks, eh? Yeah. Before I get into all that, check this out. So Andrew Han on Facebook, I think initially was joking about Motorcycles on the Moon, I think was the title he suggested for a book he wanted to do. And they posted it, I think I'm going to really do this one. So he seemed to be into it, but I wasn't sure. And I have been, like many people, both concerned and fascinated by all this AI shit going on. Pardon my French. And some of it's not very good. So I do not like how they scrape that data. It's interesting. I don't show up in very much that I can find. I'm definitely probably in there somewhere. I have Instagram and all that. But pro tip for artists: if you've got your own website, this is all just a hunch. I have not vetted this yet. But a while back, I was getting a lot of excessive traffic on my site, thanks to turn that noise down. We're gonna skip that part of this track. I like it, but it's not appropriate for the moment. But that's perfect. 7 minutes of calming morning chorus. So yeah, I was getting undue traffic, server activity on my main website, my salgoodsam.com site. And I did some investigating after having some issues with that one and for the sequential website as well. I had a whole blowout with one service provider, GoDaddy, about it because they were not being helpful for like a year. And then I finally solved the problem, and it helped me solve a bunch of problems from both sites. And it basically came down to taking anti-spider measures, anti-Google or search engine, and also spam bot spiders, and just spiders in general. These are little autonomous, I guess I don't know if that's quite accurate, pieces of software that literally crawl across the web, following all the links and mapping everything. And it can, if you get a lot of pings from these, it can give you a lot of excessive traffic. And it was doing that to my websites, which were very image heavy. So I've worked out some countermeasures. I also had to reduce the amount of images I had online, but generally worked out some countermeasures. And it's up to the spiders playing nice and recognizing when it's being told to not crawl the site. But my server activity went down precipitously, so it seemed to work. I was getting mostly a much higher ratio of real hits versus these bots, and I didn't give much thought after that. It was just good. It solved the problem. I wasn't going to have to pay for more bandwidth on my website needlessly. But then, fast forward to now, we have this problem. We have this new Pandora box that's been opened. AI art, stuff like that has opened up. I was talking about Andrew Hand's book idea, wasn't I? And I got totally sidetracked. I'm going to come back to that. Bookmark that AI shit. Let's focus on this thing here. This thing. Oh, there we go. This thing. So Andrew joked about motorcycles on the moon, and I had ideas. And I was going to say, the reason it triggered this thought in my brain is that I for a laugh, was curious what one of the AIs that I still use a free version of occasionally to explore. I'm interested in, I think the technology is going to stick around, and I think understanding how programmers are, whether intentional or not, building in biases in the prompt language, understanding how to use it, how to use it constructively, how to avoid problematic results. And one of the obvious ones, of course, is like if you use an obviously infringing cue, like people's names or particular images. Just saying. But also just curious and like figuring out, like the order of words matters. There is some technical craft to writing prompt language. And so I went with the motorcycles on the moon idea over to one that I use for laughs and plugged in a few, and most of it was garbage. But a couple from one, stable diffusion informed one, of course. So the main, I mean, it's in behind most of them, but one of the bad database informed ones, coughed up a couple of compositions that I liked. The details were all gobbledygook and silly, and I just wasn't getting enough render time, like iterations. It refines and potentially clarifies things, right, if you do more iterations. But I liked the idea, so I went off and started just sketching my own version, and that's what you see here. I did some quick hacks. This is basically a rough for a thing I want to do. The Earth and the stars are actually reuse from Dream Life, my graphic novel Dream Life, the first page. Move things around a bit to work here. And then the biker is my own concoction, informed by a pose and something that I saw in one of the renders, but more built like the way I do my props all day. I work as a prop artist in an animation studio, and so I applied my techniques there. And I've just really loosely gobbed in some watercolor wash effects in Clip Studio to think out and get it on paper. It comes up a lot, so I'm aphantasic. That means without images in your head. And people often say, like, how does that work? And I can have a theory about a composition, but I don't know anything until I start making shapes and stuff on the paper. And it's interesting because I think the way I learn about the world and learn to draw things from memory, which I can do quite a lot at this point. I've been at it for 30 years, and I practice pretty heavily. So there's a lot that I don't have to pull a reference for. I do happily use reference when it's necessary and relevant. Anytime I'm doing something new, I gotta look and find out what it looks like. If I could draw from life, go just see it in real life, I'd do that. But it's not possible all the time, and there are many things that it's more like an idea of a thing that's fantasy based. And I'm just curious what people have done, partially because I want to see if I can come up with something different, but also because what have people done? Maybe they've got some good ideas and I can incorporate some of that. I still want to put it through me and develop my own version of things, but that's a legit part of the creative process for humans. The biggest difference between us and AI is the agency behind me and the intent with which I do it, and the much more fuzzy process of the way things mix in a human head, and then in mine especially, because I don't retain the pictures. And so when people talk about how the AI doesn't have pictures in it, but it can recreate a picture, like especially if you prompt it the right way, it can recreate a picture from its training database very precisely. A great demo image that illustrates this is the Afghan girl with green eyes, which is a famous National Geographic photo. For me, I don't remember the photographer's name right now, or I mentioned. Easy enough to look up, though. Just Google that phrase. It's very widespread and iconic. which means it occurs online a lot, which means that it also reoccurs in the training data a lot. So it's a good test for a very iconic, frequently occurring image in the training data. And the results you get, make that a little quieter. The results you get from it, a search for it, if you do enough searches, some of them are definitely pretty much copies. It even recreates folds in her scar. It definitely is like a cleaner Photoshoppy type thing that prettifies her and occasionally lightens her skin and does some other inappropriate things. But that's to be expected because that's human. And it's just humaning humans back at us. I know it bugs people to think that way, but the AI is really a filter and mirror for our creative and intellectual output. So it reflects back to us all of the associations with the words in Afghan Girl with Green Eyes. A larger number of the images that I see when you search Midjourney with those words are clearly other iterations, and not all of them are using the exact prompt language, which is relevant. You can change the prompt language to not be derivative, to come up with something more creative that has the same reference points, cultural and whatever, but is its own picture to a certain degree. Now, the catch is we can't be sure which of any given one of those images might be overly referential of existing IP that someone owns. Even someone who spends their whole life looking at the internet like I do, and specifically art and concept art and animation, design and comics and illustration, and list is long, you can't hold all of that knowledge in your head all the time. So when the AI spits up something that does infringe, there isn't a real good way for us to like back off from that. And I've totally lost track of Andrew's motorcycles in the moon, haven't I again? Isn't that cute? By the way, have I mentioned that I have ADHD probably? And ASD, that's a thing. But I'm not talking about that tonight. Moon, motorcycles. I came up with something, I made up my own version. Yeah, I used reference from the AI and it influenced me. But I had agency and I had intention behind that influence. And there was a thing I wanted that I didn't see in any of the versions. I wanted a certain amount of clarity about the engineering, and being a son of a biker and mechanic, I have some ideas about that. I'm not either of those things, but I know more about them than, say, someone who doesn't have that background. And I have an admiration for that engineering, and I want to capture a bit of that. I'm going to probably put something happening. I think another bike bounding over the hill, reflected in his mirror face shield. I was thinking about doing the dome, more sci-fi type helmet, but it didn't really, I don't know. I haven't, this is a rough. I haven't settled. But I might do some things. And whatever version of this I come up with, it's going to be the version motivated by my intention and personal experience and filters. The AI has no autonomy. It has no intention. Maybe, and I've had people ask me this on TikTok, one day it will hit AGI, artificial general intelligence. Well, that's an AI that can theoretically do anything you ask it to. And I think some people are getting excited about ChatGPT, but be careful, because it is not that. It is a confidence man that you met in an alley that's very convincing and bilking you for lots of free drinks right now. However, it's interesting. So when the first time I used it, the first time I tried to use it, it was being swamped and I couldn't get into it. And the second time I used it, it was fascinating. I didn't have time to do a lot, but I tried a few things. I got it to write me a little story. Not bad little story. It's lacking some things. It needs some work, but it perfectly worked in terms of a joke on a Facebook post about a hypothetical story, and then the AI provided me a story I could share in the comments underneath. That was fun. It is absolutely pulling all the elements in that story from somewhere that contains the reference points in my query, and then were pinged and cobbled together through a randomizing selection process to make a new thing. None of those stories are literally there in the AI any more than images are in my head right now. I have aphantasia, so I see none. I hear no internal things, just this music I'm playing for us right now. And I have no other sensory emulating internal experiences except for proprioception and a kind of physiological interoception. I'm not sure if that's a word. I'm not even saying it right now. Doesn't matter. I can feel things inside myself and where they are, and I'm pretty accurate from my handful of medical experiences where I told the doctor, "You're going to find the thing here," and I point to the anatomy thing on the wall, and they're like, "Okay, sure, kid," and then they find the thing where I say it is because I can feel it. That's a weirdness that is probably a spectrum-y thing too. The lack of pictures in here, but the knowledge that allows me to recreate art or whatever on the page. Sorry, I smacked you all in the ear. That is a lot like when you sit down to write, because I have the same experience with that, and I think my experience is similar. Can't be sure, but I think so. When you sit down to write, if you're a visualizer, are you not required to see the words in your head before you write them down? I don't think so. I'm sure someone is saying, yeah, that's what happens, because we're a various and diverse lot as humans. But the general answer is no. It just becomes a sort of muscle memory thing that you just do. And that's how I draw, except there's just a lot more stuff to pack in here. And it takes a lot of drawing, over and over and over drawing things, and learning to recall the thing, retrieve it, and build it on the page. I favor kind of a loose gestural constructive hybrid technique that I taught in my dynamic drawing class, and I'll show you some examples of it shortly. And when I make a mark on the page, my sense and my memory of where a thing should be kicks in, and the mark tells me when it's wrong. So I move the mark. I don't erase the other mark because it's my reference vector, but I go in and make another line, move the line, see if I can get closer to where it feels like it should be. Sometimes when I'm more sketchy, it feels like I'm carving. I've heard other people talk about that when they're drawing too, carving away to get the form. And I suspect maybe they're working in similar ways. They're having a similar experience. And part of what I'm doing is feeling the image that's forming on the page with my proprioception, which I learned to a long time ago sort of extend externally. And it feels like touching things with your eyes. You can see the world around you, and I can see how far away this tablet is in front of me that I'm using on the screen right now, and the camera here, and the microphone. That I can, when I turn away, I can feel where it is in space. I'm really good in the dark. Was basically blind for, it was like a week, I think. I scratched my cornea, and I had such an intense pain reaction that I couldn't even open either eye. So I had a patch on one, and both were locked shut. And my partner at the time loved it because she got to be my guide dog for everywhere. And she got a kick out of being needed. And it was cute, but painful. And often I annoyed because any place that I'd been in a lot, I kind of had mapped out and couldn't walk around without bumping into things too much. I put my hands out gently just by my thighs to feel around, but I could move around pretty deftly with sound and just to the memory of feeling where things are. I use that when I draw. I can project it into the form and feel where things should be or where I'd like them to be if I'm inventing. And I don't have the image in my head, but I have a theory, and the theory includes that model. And I hone it and make the thing. And if I'm trying to draw ahead, I don't have to see ahead. I'll reference them sometimes, particularly this shot. These shots, most artists will tell you, looking up someone's chin, it's a weird, tough one. The various angles of very obliquely at the side of the face take a long time to get the hang of, but you do it enough, it's in there. There are some people who are really enthusiastic about the AI, and I kind of recognize them. I think I've had people like that as students who are just really frustrated about how much work it takes to draw. Some of the people that I've encountered online, I've witnessed, I haven't really interacted with that many of them, But Witness Online, there was a couple that I replied to posts on AI art sites who were resentful of people who have taken the time to acquire the skills to draw. It's never a magical thing. Everyone who draws well that you know has put some kind of effort into it, even if it was an effort they didn't notice because they enjoyed the doing so much. They put in the hours. Some people have to put in less hours. They have particularly good hand-eye control and coordination. That was me. And I didn't have to put less hours in, but I got better faster because I was able to imitate what I saw others doing, and I had access and opportunity. That was another privilege. My mother was an artist. She worked in an animation studio. That meant I got to see thousands of artists draw and learn things just by watching them as a little kid before I even tried. And then I just had to figure out how to do what I'd seen done, which is a lot easier than figuring out what you have to do for the first time. The AI skips all of that, and that bugs some people. And poking them about bugging it is not helping. Don't do that. I have a pretty thick skin about it. I'm just going to laugh at you. But I know a lot of people were really ticked off by that kind of shit. And I don't imagine the kids who are talking that way are watching this. But if you are, no. And no one's kept you out from learning that skill. I'm not going to condescend to you. It's hard work. No one is obliged to, and not everyone can. Not everyone has the opportunity, means, or patience, or just inclination. I think if there's anything to the concept of talent, that's where it lies. Temperament and opportunity and privilege. I was not rich. I had a difficult childhood, and I was out on my own early and having to look out for myself. And I had a couple of advantages, and one of them was that I'd been quick to learn how to draw. So I started hustling and making a living from art pretty early. It wasn't my whole living until I was about 22, 21. I think 21, actually. Mid to late 21s. It's my first work at Marvel, where I started making enough month to month that I didn't have to think about anything else. It wasn't the last time I had a day job. Things will go up and down. Careers change. The world changes faster. However, I still had to work at it an awful fucking lot. I am mildly obsessive, and it is the king of my special interests. I have a lot of special interests. Not to mention lots of fleeting, momentary, deep interests. I don't think special interests are a little strong, but I go, oh, what's that? Shiny. And I do a lot of reading. And a lot of listening, text-to-voice software, podcasts, documentaries. I went through a whole phase of just listening to university lectures for 4 years. I've lost track of how many. And the way this thing works, I'm like shit at remembering names. It's not that they're not here, but they're very unreliably retrieved. Dates, even worse, and numbers, forget it. I can't even really hold a number string longer than 4 or 5 digits in my head without having to write something down. And I've practiced, trust me. I've pushed that up. It used to be like 4. So, you know, it's part of the dyslexia, whatever other exias and isms that I'm dealing with. But I remember the synthesis of data, which works fine for art, and it actually works fine for the broad strokes of understanding things. It just makes it really hard to communicate what I understand to other people sometimes. All of the important touchstone information has been stripped away. And I remember the synthesis, but the rest. But I have this great thing called Google at my fingertips, and I can always go, there was a thing about a thing. What was that called again? A few reference phrases I do remember. Oh yeah, there it is. And everything comes back into place. It pulls the rest into place. That's great. I used to have to go grab a book, look it up other ways. Google's a lot better, a lot faster. Well, it's relative, but a lot easier for me. And I think like Google, which enabled a lot of us, and spell checks, which super was important to me becoming more of a literate person. My ability to regurgitate my thoughts into words and write them down help me refine and reframe and distill my thoughts, because again, I have no voice in my head. I can talk aloud to myself, which I've done a lot. I'm doing it right now, but even without something recording it, I've done that. That's a thing that I do a lot. I have whole rehearsed conversations. I've never done a rehearsed conversation that's actually panned out. That has been an important lesson. And I think it's interesting, the many ways that I've learned to mask and or deal with and cope with my ASD traits come down to a basic sort of contentment and exception with what is possible. And a fortunate lack of feeling like what society or other people's expectations of me matters, because it doesn't to me that much. Not like nothing, I'm not sociopathic, but I'm more concerned with the following my nose in terms of the things I want to do, rather than, advisable careers. And I'm more interested creatively in trying to find my own path than strictly following others. I want to learn about others, big time, lots to learn there, but I'm trying to pick through my own garden there. And when it comes to life in general, I've definitely tried to curate my life to work with the way I work, rather than being forced into a 9-to-5, at least a typical 9-to-5. I'm kind of doing semi 9-to-5 now with the studio. I work for the animation studio work I do. But it's also a lot, I do it here in my home, and there's a lot more flexibility as long as the work gets done before deadline, which I'm usually well ahead of the curve on that. So, where was I going with that? Mental backtrack. Don't matter no more. Let's go on to the sketchbooks. That was a meander. Did you enjoy that? Let me know. I don't see any chats. 2 are watching. Hello. So, sketchy books. I mentioned that the way I've learned to draw has a lot about processing the world around me and filtering it and learning how to recreate it. I really like The Armorer's Armor. It's fun. This is back from 2020. I think it's the first season. Yeah. Grogu. Oh, it's cute. This guy, I'm working on a story with him. The soldier. That's his name. And these guys, they're just fun. This is coming out of, like, first of all, I just like fishes and octopuses. And I believe I was... 1-7. Yeah, I was still teaching one of my cartooning classes. So this was some of these. What you're going to see around this point was my last teaching demos, concept art, building things, designing stuff. That's my soldier's sword, and this is a thing that ended up being something different in the story, in his story. Quick sketch of someone on the bus. Very loosey gesture. And then going in and building in increasingly tighter details. All very fast. It's actually cool that this shows up on this camera way better than it does to my eye. These are actors. My wife is the front of house manager for the Siegel Center. I was going to call it the Sadie Brofman, but I know that's the old name. The Siegel Center in Montreal. theater. And I would go in not last year, 2 years ago, we would do these sessions where we'd have a gesture drawing session during dress rehearsals for a play. So the artists were like special guests at a dress rehearsal. And we'd sit and draw the actors. And you're in the dark. There's I have a little lampy thing that's got a cowling on it too to keep the light very much just here. That was allowed for us to use, but nothing else. And then I'm doing these as they act, so nothing here is taken more than a minute. Maybe 2 or 3, but that's rare. And I would come back to things when they're doing something else and block in stuff. And these are just sort of improv face expression moments, gesture. And I switched to different pencils and medium to be able to use more acreage. This is a different play here than here, I believe. These are 2 different things going on. I believe that's the other musical play, but this is a study of a painting. I'm forgetting the names right now, so I'm not going to try to remember, but it's basically just sort of doing an analysis of the composition and then of the figure and the hand and face. Getting the sense of shapes. The band at that other thing. So it was a musical review performance. The 2 singers singing pop songs from, I think it's like the 60s to the 70s or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but this is the band that was playing along with them. Some costume changes. Alice's restaurant, We Shall Overcome. You Don't Own Her, But One Fine Day. Suzanne. So that's some more of that musical number. New World Order. Show Me. Where Have All the Flowers Gone? Pianist in the band. And then, of course, John Lewis, who was very cool. I remember him since I was a kid. For all the obvious reasons, he is super cool. Worthy of the title social justice warrior. You know, that phrase, champion, was usually social justice champion or advocate or stood up for. That phrase originally was only used on the left. And, actually by most people to acknowledge noteworthy efforts. When someone was either old and retired or dead, and you would laud them. No one called themselves that shit until a bunch of right-wing bullshit where they started throwing these terms around like that was a thing people called themselves, as opposed to a thing that people aspired maybe to be, but it doesn't have to be a warrior. It can be something a little more constructive. That's pretty recent. I didn't finish it because the next day people were doing tons of cartoons about dinosaurs being taken out by a COVID asteroid. But I think I will want to come back to it when this guy's holding toilet paper rolls. This one's got a bunch of them. This is back teaching the cartooning classes. I was sort of showing how you could go from more realistic. Is they in here? No. No. The more realistic studies, which I think were done somewhere else, I was breaking down photos initially of these. I think all of these. There's a reference photo that goes with each of these, but I was showing how to look at reference or life and break it down into cartoon forms to simplify the form and make it a bit more expressive, and then build up using some different techniques. And this was fun. I was mashing up. It's laid an egg. Yes, it's a cat bunny. They are cat bunnies. Swing dancers. Now that is a challenging gesture exercise, but worth it. Now, what I would recommend, and I think I might have done before, so this is the last dynamic drawing class we ever did online. Well, the first one we did online, I think it was the first one we did online, and the last one I did online because I realized I don't like teaching it online. So this is Niles and Bianca. If you look them up on like the things, the TikToks, the Instagrams, they're on there. They dance good. They move their booties good, and trying to capture that energy and motion as a flowing, fast gesture that you can do in very less than a minute type quick sketchy videos. This kind of thing here, I'm taking a little over a minute maybe. That's like the minute, half a minute. That's like a half minute. That's a minute. That's a minute. That's probably a minute. I would use different things. So if I'm going to take more time, I'll go in with a second darker contrasty color and pull out. Again, so the marks tell me where they want to be by where I've put them, but it feels a little off. So I go in and go, put it there. This is fun. Just like a blur for the head. They're sort of swinging each other around there. 1 minute, 1 minute, 5 minutes. Ideations for an ornithopter. Ornithopter? Author? Is that the right word? From Dune? Anyway. So I did a study of an actual dragonfly. So it started because a dragonfly landed on the window outside my studio. I think that's where it was. Off the porch. And I got some great macro photos of it. Just hanging out there chilling. It was a big one. And so I did a sketch on the 6th. On the 29th of the 6th month in 2020. And then I used that and some other photos to come up with my take. Dennis, call me. Constructive drawing lessons. Talking about the myth of how many heads tall is it? And way to build certain parts. Shorthand tricks for different techniques. The sack for the torso. Child. Some hacks for that. This little thing. So you want to find where the hand should be relative and how long the bits are. How does this move? Well, draw the shoulder, then draw the hand. So if you're doing something, it's holding something, put the thing and then draw the hand on the thing before you draw the arm. Yeah. And then what you do is you take the space between the shoulder and the wrist and you draw a line. And then you find the middle of that line, usually. So this depends a little bit on this. Is perspective involved? Is it pointing at the camera? But a side view, it's pretty straightforward. Find the middle line, drop down. Somewhere on this axis is where my elbow will be, depending on the rotation of the shoulder. It's going to go up and down on this vertical axis. So I can decide on the bend that makes sense. Like if it's really out here, it's going to be straight, right? But if I draw the hand more here, then I've got to get a bend in. Maybe I'm doing this. Maybe I'm doing this. Let's just sketch it out. Find the line down. Somewhere here. That's where the elbow goes. Make arm bits and arm bits that connect in the middle. You get proportionate arm. It works. With the perspective thing, well, now we're getting into advanced perspective, and we're not doing that right now. But there is a way to break that down and find the middle. Just some little hatching line exercises. Drawing. Where were these people? I like that one for the hair. I don't remember where this was. I didn't date it or note it. What are you doing, Max? Lots of blank paper still. Are we done with this one? I think we're done with this one for the moment. I've only used 41 pages. I like the sketchbook. I can never say this word. 1917. Sorry, have no clue how you say that. There you go. You know, is this going to focus? Will that work? I can't even see. I'm blocking my own screen. No, never mind. So, no, not that one. I have a lot of things, these things. There are some pages I want to be a little careful about showing. Not that. Sneaky. Oh, yep. Okay, here we go. Gesture drawing. Swing dancer, but at a school that we would go to. These are student swing dancers learning to do little shuffles and things. This I forget what this is about. It's funny though. This has got a little, so gel pens, not a Bic pen. Bic pen's very water stable, great for watercolor when you want a clean line. Gel pens are the opposite. They're water soluble. It's like watercolor pigment on the paper. So you can do a scribble with a gesture, and then use a little bit of water in a portable watercolor brush, and mush it around. It'll eventually dry, but works good. This is a logo that I never ended up finishing, a project. A filmmaker that I knew online contacted me about doing their business card, and then canceled the job after the first day. They changed their mind. It happens. But I had done this the first night thinking about it. These are roughs for a story that's in Revolver Zero, my book. You'll find the link in the doobly-doo thingy down below. Bastard's Tale, the second story of the first two, about driving into the woods with my father and him explaining to me how big the universe is. It's Matt Ginnett under a table. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name either. I don't think have I heard it aloud? I must have heard it somewhere, but I can't remember what the pronunciation is. Why did I do that? Well, he put out a book named Revolver. That's the title I'd used for my anthology for a long time. Loomis's Ken. That's me being snarky, teaching class, quick gesture block down, and then clean up with the ballpoint. Looks like the gel pens. Loomis Ken front. Oh, look, it's Dracula. Actually, so this is a Janissary? That's right, Janissary. And ours were cursed Janissary. Coming up with a design for the armor. Some more of the same. So the blue is like the gestural, sketchy, semi-constructive stuff, and then I go in with another darker color, or graphite, as the case is here, and tighten it up. A lot of side of the pencil stuff. Warming up. Oh yeah. He's got a skin problem. Something like that. I'm just fucking around, so I didn't really have an idea. I didn't use, but I like what I was doing with the blue. Why didn't I use that? Ah! What is that? He's like doing something on the counter. I forget what that's from. 2001. Didn't like the idea. Didn't do more than this rough ideation. I was trying to think of a poster, and I had some ideas, but I wasn't really feeling it. It's a big cat. I can't tell, but I think I'm making up these people. I was just doodling. Yeah. There's no reference for these. It's just automatic drawing. I do a fair bit of automatic drawing, and so I'm just sort of regurgitating forms. It's a lot like those. So when you watch an AI develop a drawing, the honing and carving I was talking about doing, it kind of looks like it's doing the same thing a bit, but also just the dream modes. You start making marks and you react to the marks and says, that feels like a cat face. I'm going to make it a cat face. Oh, it's got a woman in its ear. I don't know. These are notes talking to a student and giving them feedback. They were coming up with story ideas, and so we write them down and look at them and discuss which one seemed cool to do. And these are for my making comics class, a task we would do for the first couple of weeks, just to get in the habit of writing every day a little bit and thinking about sequentials. Do a journal and or whatever you want to write about. 3-panel comics though. Try to do them every day, but at least give me 3. Get 3 days in for sure, minimum. There was no pass-fail for the class, but I would give you the disapproving look. And a lot of people did them. It was a lot of fun. People really had fun with these. One format was to do haikus, and I believe that's kind of what these are. So I would do haiku / numerically structured poem. And poetry I like to tap on for a reference in my making comics classes, because writing for comics, when you want to write really good comics, it's challenging for me too. This is not a strong suit for me. Being economical with your words. You might have noticed. A little verbose. And learning to pare down and use the best and few possible makes for both elegant writing for a comic and more creative, thoughtful writing, more challenges about novel phrasing, but also makes room for the art. You got too much blah blah blah. You got to show more and tell some, but not everything. Try to tell something different with the words and pictures. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they affirm each other. Sometimes they contrast each other. There's a bunch of examples of word-picture relationships that Scott McCloud did in one of his books. Go check that out. It's a good list. He likes making lists. He's good at it. He's a very good list maker. I mean, he's also a good comics guy, but very good list maker. I feel like a kindred soul on a certain level that way. Some cats bring dead birds. Oscar Cat is different. He's actually Oscar the Cat, but I dropped the because I had a account that I had to keep. Instead, he leaves us worms. That is my cat, Oscar. He likes worms. He brings them to us. Up all night again. I don't do that much these days because I have a day job. Sun peeks through the window. Should I have drawn more? Not every time. First week of class. Me doing this reading stuff. First week of class. Sunday, 6 hours of talking. Blah, 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 blah. 18. Sleeping. Yeah. I don't think I talk too much, but it's not everyone's teaching style. But I had a lot to say before we got into the drawing. A lot of framing for stuff. So, and I had 2 classes. So that's why 6 hours of talking. But that's exhausting for me. So then I go and pass out because I'm so overstimulated and burnt out. Let's see, they're dated. These are 2016. Also 2016. Another night done. Yes, till the 5 a.m. sun sings. Wake late for work in silence. Oh, and I was trying a nib. Wait, so I want to try one of these. Oh yeah, because I'm cheap. So many things to do. The overwhelm. And then, like, that nib proceeded to not work very well at all the next time I picked it up. Drawing a student, demonstrating doing quick portraits with ink on this occasion. Drawing another student, Raph. An acquaintance now. Yep, another Raph. Quick demos of using a brush. Hello. I am here to talk about your car insurance with you. I phrased that terribly. Like twins things, I don't know. Something. I forget what that was about. This was creating the logo for my dynamic drawing class. That's quite old, actually. And I didn't use this drawing, but I was trying to think of like a visual and text. Demonstrating some different gesture techniques. Let's spin this around. Oh, look, Spin Again. Slam. The book adaptation I was working on, and then I just got distracted. I talked to Louis Shiner, who wrote the book, which was impressionable upon me in my early 20s, and I always thought it would make an interesting comic. Challenging, especially in today's environment. There's a lot of stuff in there that I don't think Lewis was like advocating for, but will ruffle some feathers these days. So I remember spending a lot of time and energy thinking about, well, do I change it or leave it alone? I think I would leave it alone, but just try to be very careful about presentation and representation. But it had some interesting elements, and I might come back to that day. Talking about different cartooning styles, I was doing a demo of how these guys were done and sensibilities behind them. More gesture drawing. More unfinished gesture drawing. Oh, a faceted head, face thing study. Skulls. Again, probably doing a study. You can see the marking lines. I don't tend to do that for my own drawings anymore. I can kind of just feel it out. But I was explaining how to do a build, because when you're first learning, that's what all of this is for. Like, you don't say draw a Loomis head every time you draw a head. Some people might. But the idea is to learn those shapes and proportions, and eventually they become muscle memory, and you don't have to see it or draw the whole thing. You can just draw the parts you know where they feel like they should be. Imago Theater. Very much not the direction we went with. Creating a logo for their theater. That is literally what they wanted to use. These were just roughs, but they were like, we like this. We're going to take that. So that's exactly what they used. And then coming up with the theater writing to match it, which was challenging. When you do something spontaneously, it's kind of easy. But if you do something else, trying to match it with the same spontaneous energy, that's a tricky one. Just do it a bunch more times. I think this is just an improv doodle, but it leaned into some sort of weird Buddha / Dr. Manhattan. I don't know. This is a demo for dynamic drawing that I did. So, not a demo. An example. That's the right word. Writing and pictures to show different kinds of grip and how you use your tools. Very critical drawing skills that are not taught enough. I have videos already about this on YouTube, so if you're curious, go look. They're back there. They're a little old, but they're there. Some nib brush demos. Oh, look. That asshole. Yep. This was a poster idea for a play. And I did some different kinds of quick, rough thumbnail treatments for the Imago Theater. They didn't like these. They liked something I'd done that was literally like a quick gestural scribble, which I wasn't comfortable just using. I went and drew the guitar's hand and arms more realistically, and I think I cleaned up this. But then, is it in here? I used a version of one of these scribbles I did somewhere. It might have been on a different sheet of paper. That's from a talk, a demo. Yeah, I don't see it here, but I used a quick scribble of the road next to the wall that was really loose. These are talking about word-picture relationships. And this is sort of taking inspiration partially from the pedagogy of Scott McCloud again, but I was creating my own versions of things to teach classes and do lectures. Interesting job I did. It's supposed to be about the trials of a parent of autistic kids seeking support or even just a confirmation diagnosis from medical professionals is a lot of work. I'm pretty sure, as I mentioned earlier, I'm some mix of things. But I'm not really interested in getting, like, I would be interested in getting assessed if I was confident that it was a straightforward and not very expensive process. Let me just turn that down just a wee smidge. Right. Hello. Garware animation. Hi, I'm watching from Russia. Yes, the stream gets saved. So yeah, this was a study. This was scientific illustration. I've done a handful of those. I love the idea of doing more scientific illustration. I have to say, scientists are slightly problematic clients, or at least the ones I've had. They're not professional art directors. They don't know protocol. I have pretty clear things in my work agreements now when I do freelance work, when I'm arranging it, to constrain and structure the process, partially because of my experience with a number of kinds of clients, including professors and academics. And then the job got canceled, and the person was like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. I said, oh, well, we're halfway through. Work agreement is, you still got to pay me X amount because there's a cancellation agreement. He didn't want to do that, so I had to get kind of a little... Basically, I said, well, look, you can pay me because you formally agreed to this thing and commissioned it, or I can go to your academic advisor. I don't want to do that, but, like, we have an agreement. There's that drawing I mentioned. So we used this part for the poster. I did a cleanup of this part, and I did a very much different with just one hand version of that part. This was another idea. So, Olivier. Quick portrait of Olivier. I like that one. I have more memory of this drawing that I just saw in front of me because I saw it than I do of the person in that moment, though. Sometimes, if there's a very strong emotional connection to the moment, I have more of an impression of it, but there's no sense memory, no picture. That, I believe, was talking about shapes to start to draw some heads and then how to turn them into things for a cartooning class. Early, just thinking about the logo for Dracula, Son of the Dragon. I think. Not just thinking about it. So I really liked these when I blew it up and cleaned it up. So that's literally the text for the logo. Slightly altered digitally, but... Andrew! He uses this for his social media profile still. I think this was a reward in a Kickstarter or something like that. Oops, gone that way already. Live! Goofing around with a nib. And some very sticky, never quite curing indie ink. It's left its impression on the facing page. So very improv and silly, but also I was just trying to see what I could make the nib do. This is like those patterns you saw. Structured versions of this is an exercise that I would get students to do to start learning to refine shapes and think in refined, isolated shapes, because that's like a basic drawing skill that a lot of people just want to skip ahead of. But you got to do it. Get your hand to do the thing you want it to do before you get fancy about the thing you want it to do. And then, it's like practicing your ABCs. You don't have to do it a lot forever, but you need to do a little bit. And you can totally use calligraphy as a way to exercise that kind of control too. But then you start getting into like more noodly stuff. And then every time I pick up a new tool, I end up covering a page with this sort of thing, figuring out what the tool can do. These were illustrations for someone's blog, I believe. I forget the details right now. Creating, for my signatures, when I make an illustration or a print, I have like stamp-like signatures that I use for reproduction. Drawing folks hanging out, listening to live music. I haven't done that in a while. This started off just a figure as something for a play poster, and then this is just a page of automatic drawing. Some more automatic and same figure thing. Figuring out, so doing a demo for students to explain how a cartridge for a brush pen works. This is the kind where you screw on the whole base, that's the cartridge. And a kind of warped drawing of a friend playing the mandolin. And those are just line exercises, line control. Portrait. Raymond, my father-in-law, also an artist. So here we have a template for a cheap light box for my cartooning class made out of corrugated plastic. And we made them. They worked, but then we never used them in the class. Anthony was a little like, well, we spent money on that. It was your class budget. Oh, well. We had like a piled up in the closet for a couple of years and then just never... We tried them a couple of times. They had a design flaw, which could have been fixed, but then it didn't get required. It needed to have some traction stuff on the bottom because when you lean on them to draw, they would slide away from you. That's not good. These are people from the Gathering of Masters. That's Carla Orts. Is it Orts? I'm blanking now on how you say her name. Illustrator. Very prominent. Very advocate, organizer, and motivator for the quest to get some justice in the new AI future. All of these people are pros in the business. And I think maybe that might be Anthony, the school organizer, but I'm not sure. What's that? I think it's a shelf design. No, a cat tree design. That's right. It was a cat tree design. Portrait of a friend and his new child. He now has a couple in there, much older now. That's 2013. Oh, I did a logo for a band. Studies of, I think this is Ali from an Ali video, but I was also just sort of improvising on the page with scribble. There's an artist, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he does drawings like this himself, and he calls them, I think, recursive gestures or drawings. You don't lift the pen off the paper, you just keep using the line. Quick study of somebody, I have vague memory what that was for, but I'm blanking right now, and Pi Day drawings. Pi Day. Sin Studio Vernissage Party sketch. More practicing. What's that? Yes, this is text for one of the Imago Theater plays. So yeah, that's what's happening here. This is warm-up. So then do some freehand lettering and many times over and sample the best bits for a poster. Blarg! I forget who that was. Grumpy Cat and Blarg. Oh! Some doodling. The end is nigh is not terribly serious, by the way. I was making a joke with myself. I forget the reasons why, but it's just been silly. Yep. Pi Day. See? Pi Day. Big pie. Pumpkin pie? Let's see. What do we have here? A blank spell. So these bonhommes, it was practicing for a drawing infographic thing that we did live to camera and then was animated for LinkedIn. a while back. It ended up being a lot simpler in the final version, but I was thinking out what I was going to draw. We had little text, we had bunch of compositions. Very tall man, and some very, 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 very high boots. Shapely calves. Actually not that shapely, they're kind of scrawny, aren't they? Practicing the drawing for, this is the book plate for Dream Life Book 1. It ended up being round, but... Oh, let's see. That's a boring doodle. That's boring. That's boring. Oh, what's this? Ah! This is our back window by the porch door, and I want to build a greenhouse around it one day. Someone eating. Thinking about their eating. Praying over their eating? The sketch for the cover of Dream Life Book 1. So scanned this, blew it up onto Bristol, inked it, and did watercolor, ink wash on it, and then digital colors. A fold-up Murphy couch type thing. I was thinking about maybe building. See? Folds up. What do we got here? Oh, these are notes for course plans. This looks like thinking out a drawing of a bunch of people drawing, but I forget what that's for. What does a flame look like when you burn it? Doing quick studies to draw something on a comic page. Just doing it here first. Oh! Unhappy days. We won't share that. I have time to vet that. What's this? That's another layout for Dream Life. I've had the sketchbook a long time. That's a figure drawing for figuring out the posing for a panel. Just a quick study. These are sketches of people, comedians, I think. He was not that funny. Jewish himself, but like really chintzy Catskill stuff. Not sure where that's from. That is me. This is some automatic drawing again. That. Oh yeah. This is an idea for a kind of non-traditional staircase to go by our lofted bed. I don't know that I'll do it. It was just a thought. Nope. Let's keep going that way. Dream Life plot notes. Designing the side-mounted, arm-mounted proton pack for Ghostbusters Tainted Love. That's the collection name. I can't remember. I think Tainted Love is also the title of our issue. I can kind of like feel the writer's name in the back of my head. Not, but I'm Nara. Damn it! I know it's in there somewhere. It's bugging me. Dara. Sorry, man. It's the way this thing works. It's not very useful for remembering the names, even when I know the name. Some notes, writing, demonstrating feathering, gesture, some cartoony silliness, and a city. Seaside. I don't think it's a design I'll use, but I was thinking about a location for the new Armageddon Blues. So Triton City. It's actually spun out of a different project I was doing with a couple of artists, but then it's stillborn. And so I sat on some of the ideas that I'd come up with and revisited them. And then this is Pin City, which they mirror each other in the story. This is an idea for a pedestrian bridge over an interchange near where I live that essentially cuts off two neighborhoods from each other. You see the roads. And I think a mirrored pair would be cool, but if I was only budget for one. I could dream. We used to dodge through the traffic, but now they've fenced it all off and you have to go all around it, and it's a pain in the ass. You can, but it isolates the neighborhoods from each other. Sketch of some folks at a table next to mine. 2010. That's not mine. Who drew that? Oh no, Mr. Bill. I don't know. Sometimes people draw in my book. Not often. I don't let it happen often. Oh yeah, this is a design for a wedding card that I did for my cousin. So Ange and I went to my cousin's wedding, which was a bit of a retreat, and we took some of her crafting stuff with us. And the first night we were there, we made her wedding gift card, which was a handmade, many-layered, crafted piece the two of us did together. This is a character for a set of illustrations around some plays, again, in Ottawa. Same character. These are studies that were partially inspired by the actor. Or actors, I should say. This guy's with her in the poster, standing next to her. Bit of a comical dude. And they stand in front of this. So these are all pieces that I did this way and then scanned, and then Photoshop started compiling and assembling before printing them out to do inks. And you can see there I've actually blocked them out. I can slightly see through the paper. It's translucent, ever so slightly. Not so much for the camera, but I can. And this is a scene that we're going to do, but then we ended up having them stand instead, so that blocking didn't get used. Some doodling that didn't go anywhere. Died in the vine. Autodidact. Ah, interesting. Some doodles. Noodle doodles. Self-caricature. Before the beard. Another play design character. Poster design character. And then he's standing in front of that. That's something else. Do we have more this way? No. Some drawings of folks on the metro. These are people on the metro that I sketched. More Loomisy type head things. A doodle I did to make a banner for my website, Sequential. It was a reference about global warming, of course. Some notes. Comic idea. Oh. These are nice. Ooh, that's fun. Okay. So this is me writing a comic and doing layouts. It's a webcomic-y type thing. I don't think I did this comic. It was just an idea that kind of died in the vine. Just random I'm not sure what I wrote there. Doodling, cat made up, drawing some folks in front of me. Fraggles! When I was a little kid, I got to go to the Fraggle Rock TV show set as a little kid. My mother worked for the studio that produced it. I drew someone. I was across the room. She was on a date with somebody else, and I just sketched her and thought she had a funny expression. She was liking her suitor, or whatever you want to call him. Steam, Final Countdown. I believe Steam is the name of the model. Dr. Sketchy, 2010. This is like the last pose. Quick gesture and some ink wash. So gesture, ink wash, and then ink. Clean it up. She got a pistol and some boots. looked kick-ass. Pasties. Pasties are good. So that was the second. I did this drawing 10 minutes, and then I did this drawing in another 10 minutes. Pencil, and then ink and wash. And I think what's happening here is I started with pencil. I'm going backwards here. Oh no, my first doodle was in pen. That's right. I like that one too. Very spontaneous first impression doodle of the night. Was it the first one? Yeah, these are something else, I think. Just people on the street. Oh no, that's Steam again. There's probably some overlap. Being too uptight. I know I abandoned that. It was like, nope. Very quick, too loose. Kind of honing in. So, early first pose. Not sure where the text comes from. Might have been me. There we go. Steam again. Self-portrait. Oscar. Not a great self-portrait, but I recognize it. Quick doodles of other people's. And that's it. I'm not going to get into this book because this is a long video. Was that a relaxing chat about sketching and thoughts and how my brain works and AI and like all the fucking things? How you been doing? I will add this to the next Substack post. Someone asked in the chat, do I save the videos? Yes, I do. They get saved to the archive automatically, and I generally don't take them down unless something unfortunate is in one of them. So, closing thoughts. I think that AI tech is here to stay. That's not always a good or a bad thing, like completely unconditional. It's complicated. New technology is always a mixed bag because humans are a mixed bag. We will use it for great things and also terrible things, and that's just humans humaning. I've been thinking about it an awful lot, and I have some distinct ideas about how it should go, like what a healthy pathway forward might be. This isn't necessarily what will happen, of course. I hope something like this will happen. I think it's possible. That we might, but kind of a crapshoot. At the root is the training data. That is the moral, corrupt fruit of the tree at the moment. Ages ago, I heard people talking about training AI as a vision system for robots and then as a system for recognizing things like cancer and all sorts of interesting other applications. And in the course of developing that process and how you would do it, what they were doing was finding any and all data they could shove at the AI to teach it about the world and what to recognize before they even got into specializing things like, here are cells of people's mammograms, can you spot the cancer? And to educate and inform that AI, what they would do is just scrape big swaths of the internet and shove it at the AI and sell it to just learn about everything. And it takes the pictures and it has shape recognition and pattern recognition. Initially, that's largely ignorant. That's what we're doing with machine learning, where we don't program everything like how it's going to recognize things. We get the machine to teach itself how to recognize things. So it sees all these shapes and it identifies the discrete shapes and things that we'll one day call person and baby carriage and hand wash and whatever. Melanoma. And then it has a lot of metadata and accompanying data. So like if it scrapes Instagram, it's scraping all of the comments and the tags and the descriptors and the titles and dates, everything. And it uses that data to help contextualize things. And it learns, oh, this is President Lincoln. People are talking about this picture. Every time I see this picture with this guy with this beard and the hat and the thing and the hair and the funny face, it doesn't have opinions. That's me editorializing, but it recognizes those distinct traits. And it goes, oh, That's Lincoln. Everyone keeps calling him Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln. Got it. That collection of traits is Abraham Lincoln. It's the same thing that you and I do. So in that sense, yeah, the AI is learning. It doesn't have any of the agency or self-referential interest and personal perspective and motivation, but it's strictly analyzing its world and learning to break that down and associate it with information and figure out what these things mean to us, because it's our language it's using. Many languages now. ChatGPT can do multiple languages very ably. It's bullshitting half the time, by the way. Maybe we'll get to that, but it is. So the AI looks at all these things and it learns what they are, and then you discover that your training data has made an AI that can understand a lot of things, but you're not sure how well it understands the things. So you develop a program to get it to spit back out images, and you write a prompt for it. And the developers at this stage weren't trying to make art AI machines yet. They were still working on getting AI to understand the world. But this is a way to confirm. Do you understand? What is a yellow submarine? And a bunch of pictures come back, and some of them reference, of course, the actual Beatles thing, and some things reference just yellow submarines, and all the things that those words as a set of tags pull out of the metadata and all the imagery that are associated with it. So it also would have coughed up probably a bunch of raw data along with the pictures that it creates. And it's not creating the pictures from a copy of any of the pictures it saw. It's amalgamating and building a picture. I'm not sure that happened right away, but I think they probably figured out that it could when they did that the first time. And that made somebody go, ooh, let's make it make art. And they started screwing around with that. And in a very short period of time, it's making art and video and all sorts of stuff. Now, what it makes, first of all, isn't innovative. And there's a lot of debate about whether it's art or creative. Well, art and creative are two words that actually don't have the definitive meaning a lot of people would love them to be locked to. They're actually a little fuzzier. And art can also be in the eye of the beholder. Now, you as a beholder might find some piece of art sterile and decide it's not art. And that is often an opinion that was used to justify people's distaste of modern art, or abstract art, or minimalism. Sorry, it's true. And so now we are using that subjective experiential aspect, the quality of that side of the equation as viewers, to talk about how we feel about AI. And that's really biased by how we feel about AI itself, right? So a lot of people who look at this stuff, and I posted things that are like, well, that's pretty damn good. And a lot of people have been like, I'm annoyed that I like this. Yeah, I get you. Because we find something in it. It doesn't really matter that the AI is dumb. It's not intelligence in the sense of a person acquiring information and developing a skill and gaining knowledge. It's intelligent in the cooler, less personal sense. The first definition, however, of the word, which is acquiring information about the world and acquiring knowledge. You're just taking the person out of it. We're very attached to the persons. Kind of understandable, being the persons. And I think that's always going to be our advantage. So if you're worried about AI taking your work, just make sure that you, the person, is always attached to your work. Sign your work, guys. Don't hide. Take credit, because that's your advantage now. And other people are going to relate to that, whether or not the work itself is profoundly great. Whether or not someone else looks at a piece of AI and goes, that speaks to me. That's art for them. That's fine. For others, I think ultimately many more others, they're going to look at something rendered by a human and know that there was intention and agency behind it. And even when it is a corporate piece of shit, they're probably going to go, hey, this speaks to me sometimes, and I like it. Looking at you, Marvel. I like them. I tease, but it's also true. That's why I don't work there for the comics anymore. And with the computer stuff, whether it generates art or just images is up to you. It isn't an artist. It's a tool. It's an algorithmic, randomizing interpolation machine that takes in everything we give it and mirrors back to us everything we ask for. It does it without intention or for that matter, true understanding, which is why it'll give you fingers and make things kind of weird. It also shows its cards unwittingly, but not in the way some people think when you see the little signature-y thing floating in the corner and the watermarks floating around. It's not literally copying those from a specific piece of work. It's noticed the repetition and instances of this in its large scraped database of things. And it's saying, oh, pictures you're asking for have these sorts of things in them a lot. I'm going to recreate some things that kind of look like them. But it's hybridizing. So it doesn't do one of them. It does the concept of them as seen from many, many, many examples. Just like a young artist trying to figure out how to sign their name. They go look at all their favorite artists and they go, and they come up with something that's going to be their thing. The AI is worse at it. We're still better at the synthesization of data. And then we bring to it the qualia of being human and add something extra to it. And for those that believe in supernatural, it has the soul and the spirit, and et cetera, et cetera. But to me, I am a very complex emerging set of patterns in a piece of wet hardware. And I have no problem with the idea that I am much, much more sophisticated and much more by orders of magnitude and difference and kind separate from any AI we've made today. But it's borrowing tricks that we've recognized in ourselves and used to train machines to do similar things. And it does it pretty well if all you want to do is mirror and reflect. If you think it's innovating, you're fooling yourself. But it does hybridize, it does mashups, and that's always fun. And sometimes it'll just accidentally stumble into something that works. But the truth is then you're innovating. You're accepting some new interesting paradigm of creative output that previously hadn't been seen. And what happens most of the time when humans do that is most people hate it. It takes a while for them to warm up to the concept. But if it's actually got an interesting structure or pattern and something to say about the world we live in, then a certain number of people will come around and like it. That's going to be true always for innovative humans. The hardware and software of AI, I don't think is likely to do much more than do mashups, but that might feel innovative to us. And for those, it will probably similarly already has warmed to a lot of people. Or a lot of people have warmed to it. But many others are very concerned because the way it was built is very problematic. Because as I said, when they started this whole process, they just reached out and scraped. Interesting side note for fellow artists building portfolio sites. If you block spiders, the internet searches and pings your site a little less. It's an honor system, but it works. And they used spiders to scrape all the data. I think I mentioned this earlier. And by scraping the data, that's how they get all the images and metadata about stuff to learn from. But if you block spiders, they do it less. Upside, if I Google my name and have I been trained, it's a site where you can check the indexes for a couple of the biggest AIs. I don't come up by name. None of my work comes up by name. No pictures of me come up by name or pen name. I'm able to find one of the covers I did for Dracula. All of my most popular pictures as prints and feedback that I've gotten don't show up, which is interesting because they're also posted on social media. Maybe I'm just too damn obscure. that's possible, I suppose, because fame is a contributing factor. The girl with the green eyes, the Afghan girl with the green eyes, she's repeated millions of times online, and so in the training data. And thus, when you write the words "girl with Afghan green eyes," a higher percentage of the images that it will produce will be plagiarism. Just going to recreate a lot of things, right down to the folds. It'll create other things. It's not always plagiaristic, but us as artists and consumers and everything, we can't always know whether it's overlapping in someone's IP. So AI programmers, this is a task for you. You have to add a feature. Maybe it's a blockchain thing. However, whenever the AI generates an image, it should embed in it the full knowledge of every piece of data that went into it and where that goes. Might make for a big file. So you want to code that somehow. And I think really the dominant highest percentages should be visibly embedded like a signature credit. Fine print, that's fine, but in the image field somewhere. And then the AI should also cough up a set of, like a printout, but it's on a screen, right? So post a picture, but then also corresponding metadata, so that the artist or user can't argue about whether this image that their algorithmic query has generated via some choice keywords in their prompt text. They can't argue that they don't know. They now know. You know that this image is 99% infringing on the Afghan girl with green eyes. Or 50%, whatever. I know that there's a legal parameter somewhere. I'm not sure of how that metric is done. We're talking about the same system that's used for music sampling these days. It doesn't matter if you create a new song without any actual samples in it, but music that references other culture, borrows a beat, a rhythm. If it's a little too much, a phrasing, some lyrics. If you get too close, even if everything is played for the first time by you, not a copy, not a cut and paste in any way, but you've interpreted and interpolated a new piece of music using ideas from old. If you fall too close to the old, you are in the, shall we say, air rights zone of the IP that you were influenced by. And it doesn't matter how much you feel like that piece of music is unique, you're going to lose in a court case. And usually people settle, they share credit, and if there are proceeds, they share the proceeds. It's very straightforward. It happens all the time now. Ghostbusters and Huey Lewis in the News. Ghostbusters theme, Huey Lewis in the News. Go look it up. Good example. A famous example that popped into my head just now. All right, it's going to be the same for this AI stuff, but it needs to be built in. It needs to be baked into the code. So Midjourney, Stable Diffusion. Who are the guys? OpenAI. You do the DALL-E, right? You need to create a system where all of the metadata information is brought forward into the generations. Made, the dominant ones, the infringing ones, made visible to the users, and they are notified. And then if they go forward and choose to use it for a social media post and go, oh, cool, look at this, and there is no profit involved, well, some people might find that annoying, but that should be kind of a fair, playful, non-profit-y type of thing. But if it's going to be something that involves more IP-typey things that you're infringing on, like making money or taking credit, there are established legal paradigms for this. Fraud, IP, copyright infringement. And once they know, they know. Courts have a fairly set precedent to work from at that point. There are natural guidelines on the highway of usage to let you know. You can fool around, you can play, but hey, respect, right? then we also need to address the training data. Because back when you were just coming up with this hardware and software, just playing, and it was all academic, it was a little fast and loose to just scrape the whole internet, guys. I understand that there is things like private medical data, and not just porn, but like revenge porn occurs in the database. That's not good. That's not good for you. It's not good for anyone who wants to use your thing. And it's not good for us when you've scraped our shit without consent or permission or license or arrangements. No. So you got to back up. Do over time. Build a new database. Public domain. That is a shit ton of material. And from what I understand, listening to a couple of AI people, more than enough. You could do the job. Add to that any kind of special stuff you want to include. Make arrangements with the people whose work it is you would like to include. Some kind of contractual agreement where you get access to X number of pictures to put into your database, and perhaps the use of their name as a search term. Very simple to police. You just program the AI to reject words that haven't been cleared, right? Straightforward. And then you pay them. Now, people have bounced around different ideas. I am kind of not down with royalties. We've seen what that does with Spotify, like fractions of pennies on thousands of plays and things like that. No. But if someone else wants to negotiate that deal, I feel that should be up to them. Sure. You know, maybe someone who knows their work's going to get hit a lot. It's worth it to take the royalties. But I would be down with a flat payment. A big one. If you're going to take work from me potentially, I want to make sure that I am compensated for any potential future work I've lost. It'll probably be a periodical renewal payment too, in order to be able to keep using it in your database. And that's something you're going to want to pay for, because if I say no eventually, well, you have to pull it, but you can't pull it because that's how the databases work, right? Like once the AI is trained, the pictures aren't in it anymore, but the data it learned, it's so integrated, it's everywhere. It's in the AI. It's part of what makes the AI it. It makes that algorithm tick. And surgically going in and pulling out all the bits that are related to my work would be a nightmare. Not viable. So you have to retrain. You don't want to do that, so you pay me again. As long as you're making profits and I'm making a share cut, it's a very reasonable arrangement. For those who want to use whatever about my work, or whoever's willing to do this, in their thing, I've been compensated. Make sure the metadata gives me credit, make sure you pay me on time, and we're happy. Everyone's happy. This goes for programmers, writers, anything that involves helping train the AI. And that gets us to the other question that people get anxious about. It's going to replace the need for humans. No, I think I've mentioned, I don't think that in the end, people are going to totally stop being interested in other humans. That's not how we work. Even me, kind of antisocial on the spectrum, generally doesn't go out, still more interested in other humans. We're always more interested in other humans. There are young hotheads talking shit out there because they resent that they have to work to earn skills themselves and feel like they've been kept out, and now they think they can get a fast one on artists. Well, but you're mad at the wrong person, because artists are being screwed for what they do all the time. We're not the ones usually getting rich from our work. It's usually the corporate owners. Occasionally a lucky few, Neil Gaiman to name one. His signature, his name, under a corporate banner, mind you, gets attention, and he's been smart about retaining a certain amount of say and credit and payment. Recompensate? Oh, I cannot remember the word. Oh well, that's what happens when you try to sound smart. He had good lawyers. This is an aside, but like Alan Moore, he could have good lawyers. He's chosen not really to go down that avenue, and then complains about being abused. I agree. People took some liberties and pushed and see how far he'd let them go. And the problem is that Alan let them go all the way. He walked away from the table. I would always point that out to my students in my making comics class. That you want a role model for creative rights, Look at Neil Gaiman. He doesn't make a big show about things he's pissed off, but he will let people know when you cross the line. First of all, you'll hear from his lawyers. Ask Todd. And then he will come down hard if you've infringed. But he's sweet as peas the rest of the time. And such a great storyteller. I don't really want to work with writers anymore, but I'd work with Neil Gaiman if that came up. And then protect your IP. Take credit for your IP. Sign your work. Make sure that you're out there as a person, because then you as a person, as a creator, will always be more attractive than the anonymous bot. Does pretty images. Oh, yeah. But it's not a person. A lot of people won't give a fuck. They'll go, oh, that's pretty, and walk along, and that's fine. Some of us will go, robots. Pretty. Whatever. To each their own. Shouldn't actually matter. But if it's trained on appropriately obtained data, and the folks who are being affected by its usage are compensated, that's a fair playing field. But I'll go one further, because the AI, it's not just a threat to artists. They are looking for AGI. Now, the AGI developers are utopists. They believe in some sort of perfect future where the AGI will somehow bring the cost of production and distribution and everything to zero. When pressed, they point to robotics. And sure, AI augmented robotics and AI run distribution systems and resource management and all of that probably could go a long way to making us a lot more efficient. In fact, I think it might be a key tool in our future trying to deal with climate change and a hard to predict chaotic environmental model that it might just be that only AI can keep up with and have a decent percentage shot of being right and telling you when it'll be safe to go to sea or to send something somewhere, or when the floods are coming. We might need this tool a lot in the near future, and it might help us a lot. So it's foolish to be scared of it. It's worth noting that the Luddites weren't the thing we call them all the time. They weren't concerned necessarily about even other people's problems. They were weavers who were losing their much better, more well-seated position as the makers of things to automated looms and mechanization. Not totally automated. They still needed some people, but they were, instead of letting them work less and producing just as much or more material, the owners worked them harder, but fewer of them for less money, replacing them with less skilled people who would take less money. That social cultural dynamic, we run the risk of repeating it. We already have many, many times. When people feel threatened for their jobs, they're going to get more sensitive. So poking them, kids with the AI bots, it's not helpful. It's not very adult. It's not very mature. I know you're going to laugh right now, old man telling you you're bad. But old man was young man. The old man is an anarchist. Old man is a hard lefty. And I'm not big on throwing Molotov cocktails. It'll happen if it has to, not because I want it to or don't want it to, because stressors will get to the point where violence becomes the release valve. We don't want to get there. And AI and robotic automation, if we don't deal with the impact on the labor force globally, not just artists, between that and climate change, we could get there. That would be ugly. And we don't have to. That would be stupid. We're capable of being smarter than that. It's not inherent. It's definitely not a given. I am not naive. So we have to do it actively. We have to organize to make sure that the intellectual property of people is protected. We have to institutionalize AI that generates with full accreditation and tracking data and the ability to identify it and separate it from human efforts when you want to. We have to create an environment where those whose labor is compromised by the use of AI are compensated for that. And when it gets to the point where the entire human species priority to be functional labor for the capitalists becomes compromised, we can't throw us away, because that would be stupid. And cocktails would get thrown, not the fun kind. We need to bring in social infrastructure, anticipating some version, good or bad, whether these legal matters get sorted out the way we'd like or go some other way. And that's a possibility if we're not smart about it. We need to bring in, alongside of that, UBI. I like, frankly, unilateral, unconditional living wage income. So universal basic income is usually the phrase. I like people making a different framing, saying unconditional income. And it needs to be set so that it's relevant to local cost, not just basic, but local living wage. This needs to come alongside measures to make sure that userage via rentals and food and all the other necessities of life, water, are not leveraged to just rake that back and leave people in poverty still. We already live in a post-scarcity world, look it up. But we choose to maintain scarcity so that certain small percentages of our population can profit from that. And we'll let a certain number of our population starve so they can currently. We need to shift that. So we bring in the universal basic income, the unconditional living wage. You get that at the beginning of the year. If you make more in the course of just general taxes, I would frankly prefer that they be less income taxy and more services and things you do and use. But, you know, however that goes out, I am for taxes if they're used to help run a better society. And you get the corporate and super rich and all the people in between to pay on a sliding scale what is appropriate and relevant to their income. Not get off more because you make more, because that doesn't make no sense. And you use that plus all the savings from not having the stress of financial fringe existence or worse. That goes away. So there's a whole bunch of costs that disappear, and that money can go into the UBI. And all of the money for welfares and unemployment insurance and job training, all of that stuff, that could go into UBI. Maybe job training is the thing you keep. I'm actually very into the idea of free education generally. Add that to the pile. Not a bad idea. But if you keep education prices reasonable and people are getting unconditional living wage, they can take a bit of that or a little extra they make and put it towards more education. So either way, it can work. I'm not against sane markets. It's uncontrolled capitalist markets that are the problem. Unregulated or poorly regulated. Very biased. We take care of people's basic needs. We guarantee housing. We guarantee access to food. More local gardens. Healthier food, ideally. We generally make things so that your ability to render labor isn't the keystone, the turnkey to access to survival in a capitalist society. Your utility as a human isn't just in your ability to make money, any more as here in Oscars to do much more than meow and purr and ask for food. It's not that work's bad. Work's great, but work that you define is better. And if we can get it together as artists who are very good at making persuasive arguments to tell charismatic, compelling stories about a better world where AI becomes a tool that we use to build the better world instead of a tool we use to beat others down and just indulge, we can help persuade the collective masses to make that change happen. And that's what we need. That's the direction we need to go in. We've needed to go in it a long time. AI and automation are just forcing our hand, because we have that path that we could take, or we have a cocktail party. Good night.